How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
Well. What a weekend. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here across the nation. The phone number, should you wish to be on the program, 877-973-7425. I have to begin here. It is a tradition unlike any other. 25 consecutive years of being rejected in the Masters lottery. I just need that on the record. 25 years. What do I have to do to get a ticket? Okay. Now, we got to begin. Listen, so I want to do it this way. We'll get to Kamala Harris, but I want to forget all the opinion. You'll get that. But let's just walk through everything, and let's begin with Biden, and we'll get to Harris, and then we'll get to Trump. We'll play this out. I'm happy to take your phone calls, 877-973-7425. President Biden is not resigning from the presidency, and Republicans are insisting he should, and I think they would be wise to leave this alone. Giving Kamala Harris the incumbency of the presidency and the optics of the presidency, in addition to her being able to clear house of Biden appointees and say clearly she's reforming, give her more time, that's a dumb move for the GOP. But Biden is leaving. Now, Joe Biden's stepping out of the presidential race is as voluntary as walking out of the room from the 27th floor window. He's not doing this voluntarily. You do need to understand that. The pressure was becoming too much for Joe Biden. Nancy Pelosi signaled to the Biden team that she would go public this week, that she thought he needed to move on. She had been allowing others to do it publicly. She herself had been working privately. So I will give you the timeline as I understand it from people who actually know what they're talking about. Remember, I was told by people last Thursday that he would be doing this, but probably not until today. No one actually guessed yesterday. I'll give you the behind the scenes and what actually happened based on press reports and my own conversations with others. But here's what happened. Nancy Pelosi had a frank conversation with Joe Biden last week about polling. And she brought Mike Donilon onto the conversation. Mike Donilon is one of Joe Biden's three trusted aides, Ron Klain, Mike Donilon, and Steve Ricchetti. Mike Donilon has been with Joe Biden throughout the Senate, his time in the vice president's office, and now. And when Joe Biden began to challenge Nancy Pelosi about polling, Nancy Pelosi had Mike Donilon come on and challenge Mike Donilon, who wound up agreeing with Nancy Pelosi about what the polling shows, but it was not Joe Biden's polling. So Joe Biden, after the conversation, ordered a series of polls in the swing states: Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina. They conducted the polling Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They got the results back. Joe Biden does, you should know, have COVID. I realize there's the conspiracy theory that he doesn't. He actually has it, and he has it bad. He got it from Doug Emhoff, Kamala Harris's husband. They were hanging out on the White House balcony after the 4th of July. Everyone around Doug Emhoff got COVID. He was diagnosed first. Now Joe Biden has it. He has a terrible cough, apparently. By the way, I realize everybody's skeptical, and I realize there are people in the audience saying, come on, Erickson, you know that's not true. Actually, I got pretty good sources here. He's not well. On top of everything else, his age, his mental capacity, everything else, he's got COVID. So he's self-isolating in Delaware. They get the polling results. Donilon and Ricchetti go to Delaware. They don't care that Biden's got COVID, they go to Delaware to present him the polling, and it's bad. And there are two things you need to know about the polling and my understanding of the polling, and I think I'm right in what I've been told based on how the press itself is characterizing the polling. Number one, not only is Joe Biden being brutalized in those states, his campaign team also did additional polling, and it shows in Minnesota, Virginia, and New Mexico, Joe Biden is getting crushed. So Joe Biden would have to spend resources in those three states in addition to the swing states. And also, it suggests Joe Biden is so far down in Pennsylvania and Georgia and Arizona and Nevada, he's closer in Michigan and in Wisconsin, that it's just unrecoverable. The deficit is so much, and the number one issue is Joe Biden's competence, and everything Joe Biden does at this point reinforces he doesn't have the competence. On top of that, the Detroit Free Press released a poll, and the Detroit Free Press numbers were really bad for Joe Biden, but the Biden internal numbers were actually worse than the Detroit Free Press numbers. He's not feeling good. He's got COVID. Nancy Pelosi let him know she's coming public this week. He had no choice. The last holdouts were Hunter Biden, Steve Ricchetti, Mike Donnellan, and Jill Biden. Even Ron Klain was beginning to suggest they needed a path out of this. And so Joe Biden, with Steve Ricchetti's help, wrote his letter saying he will not run. There is no question he's going to stay in the White House. They're not giving up the White House. He's going to see this through to the end. But he's given up the campaign. Here's a problem. This is a problem, and you know it's a problem because the media hasn't said anything. It has been publicly reported that Joe Biden asked the press corps, asked the pollsters to not just poll himself, but also poll Kamala Harris. You will note there's been no buzz. There's been no buzz. The reason there's been no buzz is because Kamala Harris doesn't do well either. The Biden team thinks Kamala Harris is very weak. The Biden team has decided, in fact, that Kamala Harris probably can't beat Donald Trump. They've decided that based on the same polling that they did this past week. But they have no choice. Here's why. I told you this last Thursday. According to the people that I've talked to, and I've got good sources, I maintain friendships on both sides of the aisle. Joe Biden, when he began to hint maybe he would do this, when he began to ask questions about what a departure would look like, was very, very adamant there can be no open convention. In the history of the Democratic Party, going back to the 1800s, the Democrats have had 4 open conventions, and they have lost the general election in every single one of them. Joe Biden knows history. He doesn't want an open convention. He doesn't want an open convention because he knows that'll help Donald Trump. So the fallback is to go with Kamala Harris, rally around Kamala Harris, and move forward. Here's the problem for everybody. All the people who told you Joe Biden was fine last month were the people telling you Kamala Harris was terrible, and now those are the people telling you there's a problem with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is fine. It's a real role reversal. In October of 2023, Kamala Harris was the cover story in New York Magazine calling for Joe Biden to remove Kamala Harris as his running mate for 2024 because everyone viewed Joe Biden's candidacy through the lens of Kamala Harris and people didn't like her. In October of 2023, when Nancy Pelosi was asked if she supported Kamala Harris as the running mate for Joe Biden, she said she'd leave that to the White House. She didn't say yes. It's not a coincidence Nancy Pelosi this week has not yet endorsed Kamala Harris, nor has Barack Obama, you should note. The Clintons have. The Clintons went on record last week saying they thought Joe Biden should stay in. There's a rivalry there. And I want it known for the record here with my audience, as many of you, and you would be surprised how many have been very angry with me. I have told you all along that the Biden team and the Obama team hate each other, that the only ones who really like each other are Barack Obama and Joe Biden, and they like each other to a degree. I've told you that all along, and many of you, not a small number of you, many of you have called to complain about me saying that because you hear otherwise from elsewhere. You send emails, you leave comments on social media, and guess what? It turns out the Biden team and the Obama team hate each other, and Biden is furious about what's happened and feels like it's Barack Obama betraying him again, just like in 2015. They're furious. So Biden is out of the race. He will not leave the White House. He will not give up that power. He is out of the race under duress. He resents it and is angry about it. He's not happy about it. This isn't his choice. He's making it sound like it's his choice, but it's not. They got him while he was sick. They piled on. They tried to construct the reality they wanted, and they wound up winning that reality by piling on Joe Biden while he was down and out, suffering from COVID. That Kamala Harris's husband gave him. This isn't a way to help the Democrats in 2024. They're certainly excited today. Oh, they are excited. Andy Beshear of Kentucky is already out attacking J.D. Vance, and he ain't one of us. J.D. Vance grew up in poverty. Andy Beshear grew up with a silver spoon in his mouth. He's angling to be VP. Here's a problem, though. And I'm going to spend more time with this at the bottom of the hour when we actually get into the problems and realities of Kamala Harris. Publicly, a lot of Democrats say that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. Privately, many Democratic politicians don't actually believe it. You believe it if you're a Democratic partisan. If you hear me say this, you believe Donald Trump's a threat to democracy. Democratic politicians, most of them don't actually believe it privately. And that's not me saying it. It's Ezra Klein, a progressive who writes in the New York Times, who's talked to these Democrats. I mean, I've talked to Democrats, but you can say I'm being self-serving. Ezra Klein isn't. And he and I hear the same thing from Democrats. They privately don't actually think Donald Trump's a threat to democracy. But Kamala Harris is now a threat to the ambitions of a lot of Democrats. If she's the nominee and she wins in 2028, she's the incumbent. So Gavin Newsom and Gretchen Whitmer and Andy Beshear and Roy Cooper and all these other Democrats, by 2032, if she were to win re-election, they'd be really old news, out of date, expired. Do you really think they want her to win when they don't really think Donald Trump's a threat to democracy? They just say it. Do you really think they want her to win? Do you really think Joe Biden? Do you really think Joe Biden is going to really step up and help now? Kamala Harris will go to the war chest, but he feels embattled. He feels put down upon. He feels pushed out. You've got all these Democrats now praising him, American hero, the greatest president to ever live. It's real easy for them to say that to the chalk outline of where he fell after they pushed him out the window, which is what they're doing. This was not a choice by Joe Biden. He was pushed out the window. He resents it. Not a way to bring party unity except superficially. And in the meantime, the Biden team is already warning, we got to go with Kamala Harris, and she's not a good candidate. Doesn't really have the makings of a great campaign for 2024 for the Democrats, but this is where they are now. Hello there, welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. I gotta do this now. I gotta throw this in here. There are already people asking if Kamala Harris can be president of the United States because her parents are immigrants. They're raising the birther issue. If you believe that Kamala Harris can't be president of the United States because her mother is an Indian immigrant and her father is a Jamaican immigrant, you are either an idiot or a racist. You can pick which one you are, but you've got to pick idiot or racist because those are your two options. Maybe ignorant, idiot, or racist. Kamala Harris is qualified to be president of the United States. Point one. Point two. No, Barack Obama cannot be vice president for Kamala Harris because to be vice president, you must meet the qualifications of being president, and presidents can only serve 8 total years. Barack Obama has served 8 total years, therefore he can't be vice president of the United States for Kamala Harris. Point two. Point three. I was promised Michelle Obama. All you people have told me Michelle Obama was going to be the Democratic nominee. And when I told you she wasn't, I got angry emails from people saying I was just a know-it-all who didn't know anything. I was promised Michelle Obama. Where the hell is Michelle Obama in all of this? I was promised Michelle Obama. My listeners told me that I needed to listen to people smarter than me who told them that it was going to be Michelle Obama. When I said it wasn't going to be Michelle Obama, they got mad at me for saying I didn't know anything. Why were they listening to me? I was promised Michelle Obama. Where is she? Kamala Harris can be president. Barack Obama cannot be vice president. And Michelle Obama is not going to be president. I will throw in one more. A bunch of people have been circulating a video of a guy breaking down the attempted assassination, claiming there had to be more than one shooter, that he is an expert PhD. He is a PhD in neurotoxicity, not an ideology. All of the ideological experts have pointed out the guy's an idiot who's confusing echoes and other people shooting for the shooter. Stop sending me the video. It's garbage. Maybe the internet really is a bad thing because people are so overwhelmed with information, they've lost the ability to discern the truth. Now, we can move on to other things, but first, I got to tell you, I want to tell you about my vision computer experience because we have had one. One of the monitors, one of the two monitors, my kid has a gaming PC, one of the monitors broke. Vision was fantastic. Not their fault. It's not theirs. It's a third party that we got from them. And I tried the different cables. I tried HDMI. They worked with us try these things to make sure. And expeditiously, they took care of the problem. That's the kind of hands-on customer support you're going to get. It wasn't their problem. They didn't make the monitor. It was a faulty monitor. And they took care of it so quickly. And we're so great about it. That's the sort of customer support you get from them. There was no arguing over anything. It was just, oh, you got a problem. Let's fix it. And they did. And they do that not because I'm me. They do it for anyone. And they do it with their tech support as well. I mean, literally 15 seconds or less, we got somebody on the phone. I did not have a special number to call. I called the number everybody else calls, and they just took care of it. You can have a relationship like that with Vision Computers as well. You call them at 404-COMPUTE or go to visioncomputers.com. 404-COMPUTE. Or visioncomputers.com. Tell them I sent you. You're going to get a great deal on tech support. 404-COMPUTE or visioncomputers.com. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. If you'd like to be on the program, I'm happy to have you. So we've got Kamala Harris now will be the Democratic nominee. But she doesn't have it in the bag. And that's something you got to keep in mind here. Is that she still needs to woo Democrats. The odds are it's going to be hers, but there are people like Nancy Pelosi who are not exactly fearful of Kamala Harris because of the fact that, Nancy Pelosi doesn't have anything to lose. She's too respected in the Democratic Party, and Nancy Pelosi knows that Kamala Harris is not a great candidate. When Kamala Harris got elected in 2010 to the Attorney General spot in California, she barely got elected. She was able to raise money, but she has fundamental problems on the campaign trail and has for quite a long time. And everybody, even the Biden team, knows that Kamala Harris has problems that they're going to have to deal with. If you haven't seen it already out of the gate, by 3 o'clock yesterday, The Trump campaign super PAC already had their first attack ad on Kamala Harris out.
Kamala was in on it. She covered up Joe's obvious mental decline.
Our president is in good shape, in good health, tireless, vibrant, and I have no doubt about the strength of the work that we have done.
But Kamala knew Joe couldn't do the job, so she did it. Look what she got done. A border invasion, runaway inflation, the American dream dead. They created this mess. Kamala owns this failed record. Make America Great Again Inc. is responsible for the content of this advertising.
I mean, look, they're going to tie her to that, but there's so much more that they can tie Kamala Harris to. I think it behooves the Republicans to focus not so much on the cover-up, which will play to the base, but there's so much more that they can play to with Kamala Harris's record. I need to say this again, because this is a point that you just have to appreciate. Joe Biden asked that a series of polls be conducted by his campaign team to show him the state of the race. Those polls are what convinced Joe Biden over the weekend that he needed to drop out, that it was not recoverable. The problem for the Democrats is that the same polling that showed Joe Biden was polling so bad he couldn't recover by November showed Kamala Harris losing to Donald Trump. Now, you don't need me to tell you that with my sources, although it's true. All you have to know is that the media last week reported that the Biden team had commissioned these polls and wanted to see what Kamala Harris did as well. And you're not hearing that Kamala Harris would be beating Donald Trump. In fact, you would be hearing, they would be touting that in the research that Joe Biden dropped out because the polling showed he couldn't pull it off, but you would be hearing the same polling showed Kamala Harris winning. It doesn't. In fact, in Georgia, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution has dropped polling. Biden was 7 points behind Trump. Harris is 5 points behind Trump. This is from Axios. President Biden hesitated to drop his reelection campaign in part because he and his senior advisors worried that Vice President Kamala Harris wasn't up to taking on Donald Trump, according to 3 Biden aides familiar with talks about his withdrawal. Biden decided to withdraw under pressure from the party and endorsed Harris, but his private anxieties reflect broader questions among some Democratic leaders about Harris as their nominee this November. About half of the vice president's staff is paid for by the Senate, which requires disclosures. Of the 47 Harris staffers listed in 21, only 5 still worked for her as of this spring. She has massive staff turnover. Joe Biden, as vice president, had a much more stable staff. Likewise, if you go back to 2020, there were a series of stories about Kamala Harris running in 2020 as her campaign imploded and the staff themselves had turned on Kamala Harris. Let me read for you. This is from 2020 in the New York Times. From those polling results to Ms. Harris's campaign operation, fundraising, and debate performances, it has been a remarkable come down from a senator from the country's largest state, a population with star power who was compared to President Obama even before Californians elected her to the Senate in 2016. Yet even to some Harris allies, her decline is more predictable than surprising. In one instance after another, Ms. Harris and her closest advisors made flawed decisions about which states to focus on, issues to emphasize, and opponents to target, all the while refusing to make difficult personnel choices to impose order on an unwieldy campaign, according to more than 50 current and former campaign staff members and allies, many of whom spoke on conditions of anonymity to disclose private conversations and assessments involving the candidate. Many of her own advisors are now pointing the finger directly at Ms. Harris. In interviews, several of them criticized her for going on the offensive against rivals only to retreat, and for not firmly choosing a side in the party's ideological food between liberals and moderates. Oh, she's chosen progressives for sure by now. She also created an organization with a campaign chairwoman, Maya Harris, who goes unchallenged in part because she's Ms. Harris's sister, and a manager, Mr. Rodriguez, who could not be replaced without likely triggering the resignation of the consulting team. Even at this late date, aides said it's unclear who's in charge of the campaign. That's from 2020 when she ran and did not make it to Iowa. Now, this is from October of 2023 in the New York Times, the 4th reboot of Kamala Harris. In September, New York Magazine published The Case for Biden to Drop Kamala Harris. And a Washington Post column argued that Biden could encourage a more open vice presidential selection process that could produce a stronger running mate. In the same week, two Democratic House members, Representative Jamie Raskin of Maryland and former Speaker Nancy Pelosi, the Democratic Party titan and fellow Bay Area native who has known Harris for decades, though the two are not particularly close, evaded saying on CNN whether they thought Harris remained the strongest running mate for Biden in 2024. Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, who, by the way, endorsed Harris over the weekend, the progressive who ran against Biden and Harris in the 2020 Democratic primary, demurred early this year when asked by a local radio station if Biden should keep Harris as his running mate in 2024, saying, "I really want to defer to what makes Biden comfortable on his team." Warren later called Harris twice to apologize. Harris initially ignored the calls. The doubts have prompted a public relations blitz. Harris was featured 13 times in a video announcing Biden's reelection bid. White House senior aides have exhorted Democrats to stop criticizing Harris to the press, on the record or off, telling them that it's harmful to the overall ticket. And then there's this from the exact same piece from October of 2023, less than a year ago. A top Democratic consultant said that Harris has a little Ron DeSantis in her in terms of the disconnect between political talent and expectations. One major donor said there's an agreement among the party's heavy hitters that having Harris as vice president to Biden is not ideal, but there's a hope she can rise to the occasion. Sometimes the arguments against her feel more petty. A member of Harris's staff remarked on the amount of downtime the vice president schedules on trips, which includes an inordinate amount of time dedicated to hair care. May sound petty, but that's when your staff is complaining like that, it's a red flag. On the one-year anniversary of her tenure as vice president, the BBC ran a story titled, quote, this is the actual title, Kamala Harris, 1 year, where did it go wrong for her? The Politico ran a story. Here's the subtitle. There is dysfunction inside the vice president's office, aides and administration officials say, and it's emanating from the top. There you go. There you go. I want to go back to something Mika Brzezinski said last week. Let me play this clip for you.
He started pushing back, and I think part of that is giving him the space to make this decision, to finish making this decision with his family this weekend.
He's also a man of faith and a man of tremendous historic accomplishment. And look, it's impossible to ignore where this is going and exactly what started it. I'm not unaware of that. At the same time, I still believe that you don't know what you have until it's gone, and that there will be that feeling at some point.
You think there'll be, if he leaves the race, you think Democrats will regret it?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. Because among many reasons, which I've already stated and I won't state again, don't worry, but none of these notions are backed by a strong alternative, an alternative that has beat Trump before, an alternative that is vetted, an alternative that is tested. And so that's a lot to throw away.
That's Mika Brzezinski last week. Now, what I find most notable about this is the change from so many people who were rah-rahing so much about Joe Biden and then suddenly saying maybe he needs to go away, and now you've got this.
Mika, you and I have been talking to contacts across the campaign in the White House. And the last few weeks have been nothing short of bleak. The money is dried up. The support is dried up. It was impossible even to put the convention together in a way that was going to be compelling. We talked to the same sources last night. They said it was like a bolt of electricity that shot through the entire campaign. Money was flooding in. They couldn't. They basically, needed air traffic controllers to direct all the calls for the people who wanted nothing to do with the convention a week ago, who are now begging to be a part of it, to get on that stage, to introduce people, to be I must say, Like Willie said, a light switch. And by the way, these are the same people. Two things can be true at the same time.
Yes,
these are the same people that were crying about the departure of Joe Biden, the man they love, but also energized by the fact that their base is so excited by Kamala Harris.
There are people also who were really upset about what was happening to Joe Biden, the infighting, sort of this, the back. It was really painful. It was a really, really painful time.
They're all excited, but that gets back to Mika's point. Kamala Harris isn't actually tested. Her one test on the national stage, she failed. She never made it to Iowa. The very same people who are right now telling you that she's great are the same people a month ago telling you Joe Biden was fine and anything to the contrary was a lie. And those are the same people who less than a year ago were whispering Kamala Harris isn't a great candidate. There's not time for the Democrats to do a messy open convention process. I think that Pelosi and Obama prefer it because they know Kamala Harris isn't a strong candidate. They are worried about stopping Donald Trump. I don't know that Kamala Harris can do it. For a moment, the Democrats can have this moment of rah-rah unity, but at the end of the day, Kamala Harris is Kamala Harris. She wasn't a strong candidate when she ran for Attorney General in California. She just outspent everybody. She wasn't a strong candidate when she ran in 2016 for the Senate. She was there for not an entire full 6-year term when she ran in 2020 for president and fell embarrassingly on her face. And now this. She keeps falling upward, but how far can she go? I will tell you this. As of today, any criticism against Kamala Harris is going to be labeled sexist and racist. You and I both know it. If Kamala Harris were a white man and otherwise the same, you could say whatever you wanted, but now the Democrats will instinctually say it's all sexism, it's all racism. They'll do so at their peril because Kamala Harris actually, she's got problems. She's not a good candidate. She has never been a good candidate, but now she is their candidate, and they don't have time to replace her. The consolidation is happening quick even without Obama and Pelosi. She'll be the Democratic nominee now, more likely than not. She's got to find a running mate, and she needs a better staff, but it sounds like she's going to inherit the Biden staff, and that in and of itself is a problem because they're not more competent than her, and she's not very competent. And this is all causing, of course, turmoil out there. The markets are down right now. They're starting to rebound some, but it just has been a wild time. Swiss America wants to help you protect your hard-earned assets right now. They've been the trusted leader in precious metals for 40 years. They've been warning about a secret war on cash, and they want to give you their report completely for free about the secret war on cash. They're rated A+ by the Better Business Bureau. They can educate you on protecting your assets. All you have to do is get their report by calling or texting 800-289-2646. The all-out war on cash includes digital forms of currency. You've got Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa buying up gold reserves around the world, betting on U.S. financial collapse. You don't want to miss out on their report on the secret war on cash. 800-289-2646. Completely free. Just mention Eric. You can text them to 800-289-2646. Text my name, Eric. Or you can go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric, SwissAmerica.com/ERICK, or text Eric to 800-289-2646. Message and data rates may apply. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. I don't know when we're going to get proof of life on Joe Biden, but we probably need real proof of life on Joe Biden at this point. This hour of the program is brought to you by First Liberty Building and Loan in Noonan, Georgia. They can help you nationwide. I say Noonan, Georgia, because I want you to know that they're in middle America. Noonan is a great small city outside of Atlanta. If you're listening coast to coast, they specialize in helping businesses grow coast to coast. So if you're listening on KSTE out in Sacramento, if you're listening on WDBO down in Orlando, if you're listening on WICC up in Connecticut, doesn't matter where you're listening, they can help your business grow. If you're buying a building, if you're buying you need equipment loans for heavy equipment. If you're buying a franchise, that's sort of what they specialize in. They make their own decisions. FirstLibertyGA.com. FirstLibertyGA.com. I want to just talk to you in a serious moment, non-partisan. If you'll allow me just a moment of just making a non-partisan statement here. I'm a Christian. The Bible says I'm supposed to pray for my leaders, not pray against them, but pray for them. And I would encourage you to pray for Kamala Harris, whether you like her or not. She is taking over a campaign that has not been exactly competent, and she doesn't have a great track record herself of running nationally. You may not want her to win, but the Vice President of the United States now has to staff a campaign, plan a convention, find a running mate, find her own positions and path outside the shadow of Joe Biden without trying to burn bridges willingly or unintentionally with Joe Biden on his record. It's a daunting task for anyone. It will be overwhelming for her. And you don't have to pray that she loses, but pray for your vice president. Scripture says, pray for your leaders, and she is one of them. You should be praying for this lady. She's going to be overwhelmed with the task at hand. She's got to discern the people who are for her as opposed to just using her for their own ends. It's a daunting task for anyone. It will be a daunting task for someone who is right now the vice president of the United States, was not intending on running a campaign for president at any time soon, and is going to have to. I don't envy her position. I don't want Kamala Harris to win. I think Kamala Harris would be a bad president. I think her policies would be bad. But I also understand, just as a human being, when you are thrust into a position like this, it can be overwhelming. It is not an easy thing to run a campaign at the local level or the state level. To run a campaign at the national level is going to be crazy. And I don't want Republicans or Democrats, either side, to be in a position where the people they are surrounded with are overly ambitious to their own ends and not loyal. Loyalty goes a long way in politics, and you see this on both sides of the aisle, where ambitious, ruthless people pretend to be loyal only to climb the ladder and then stab you in the back. And I don't think we should want that for anyone. Scripture says pray for your leaders. This is a woman who could use a lot of prayers as she heads into this. Even as I hope she loses, I still actually don't want our vice president to be overwhelmed in running a campaign while also having to be vice president to a president who isn't quite all there.